this is your first time or you've only been here a little bit, you may not have heard me preach a few years ago on reparations after the Ta-Nehisi Coates article came out in the Atlantic. And I spoke about doing family genealogical research into my name, having a very fraught relationship with the Sims family name and lineage, and wanting to learn more about it, and finding that my ancestors on that side had come from England to the New World via Antigua in the Caribbean. And I had to pause for a second and wonder, what could Captain Sims be doing in Antigua? Turns out he was not just setting up to have a vacation, that it was in fact a slavery plantation. And in trying to do some of that research and wrestle with that historical reality has led to a very deep and personal connection to the idea of reparations. So that's where I'm coming from today. That is the quick story. But it is a story that I hope ends with this term, beloved community, that we speak of often. Words that were expressly named by Josiah Royce, a Christian theologian, made mystical by Howard Thurman, who influenced Dr. Martin Luther King, who made it the most popular. The beloved community was not meant to be a vision of heaven in the clouds, but a practical possibility humanity could create on earth. In the beloved community, love and justice rule. People of all identities are equal and included, and conflict is solved by nonviolent means of reconciliation. When you read about the beloved community and what these folks meant when they talked about it, they often talk about the need for love, a word that we spoke of last week in the meeting. Not just love in English, but the word love from the Greek agape, a divine kind of love. We might call it love with a capital L, often called heroic love, love that is overflowing, that is transformative, that is sacrificial. Love that calls folks to give up self in support of, in protection of, in Josiah Royce's words, in loyalty to community. That community was the highest ideal, not individuals. It needs love to be beloved community, and it needs justice to be beloved community, meaning that when that love or that loyalty is broken or denied, justice requires some kind of atonement or restoration. This congregation has its foundings from the Universalist Restorationists, who were a heretical group who split off from the other Universalists, but who eventually won out on the argument, who argued for exactly this, that justice involved some kind of what they called future punishment. The idea was after someone dies, the soul goes through an education, perhaps a purification, an atonement, a restoration towards being ultimately united with God. The restorationists believed in this individual future punishment, and the idea was that eventually the whole community was restored. The transformation of hearts and souls only happened, though, not because the individual wanted it. Their theory was people can be stubborn. It might take a long time, maybe as long as 10,000 years, some posited. I say, it's kind of harsh. And then I think about some of our neighbors who are a little stubborn when it comes to things like science. I think, actually, it takes a long time to change people's minds and hearts. 10,000 years might be about the right estimate. In Royce's terms, he said, only the community can do the act of redemption. Only the community can do the act of redemption. If someone broke their loyalty or their commitment to the community, that person could not redeem themselves. There was no way for the individual to do that. The wounded community, the oppressed community, the person who had been wronged, the community that had been wronged, they could activate restoration and bring someone back into the fold. In fact, that's what they're supposed to do. But one can't personal responsibility their way into heaven or into heaven on earth. That was the idea of the beloved community that King took as the antidote for some of society's worst problems. He based it on the nonviolent resistance movement and the resulting transformation that could happen in the wake of nonviolent resistance. For King, like Royce, community was the highest ideal, but King was also big on people's personhood, our individual personhood, no matter our color, race, etc. But your personhood in this model was derived from the highest ideal. That because you were a part of a community, that informed your personhood. You weren't a person just on your own. You were a part of something larger always. It didn't mean your personhood wasn't fully affirmed and fully seen in beloved community. But you had to be part of the community, either the beloved community, the community on the path to beloved community, or the community of the oppressors. The anti-community, we might call it. One that focuses on capitalism, militarism, and racism, that denies the full personhood of some in favor of others. A community that passes bills against transgender kids. A community that imposes death sentences on poor and black and brown folks at higher rates than any other. A community that commits treason against its founding ideals because an election did not go the way they wanted it to. Treason against the ideals of the beloved community, betraying the loyalty to community, we might call the loyalty to life, the loyalty to agape love, creates a rift, a split in need of redemption. So the rift in this country, we mostly know, played out over 246 years of legalized slavery, 103 years of Jim Crow laws, and more than 50 years of ever more ingenious and insidious ways of maintaining the hierarchy of this country that privileges light-skinned male able bodies. So the question for us, when faced with that historical reality, is to acknowledge whether we are all affected by that history, even if we did not personally and intentionally participate, or not. If the research on genetic trauma is to be believed, and the idea that an analysis of bodies of culture, bodies of color, with elevated cortisol levels passed down from generation to generation has some connection to that long history, if the innate trauma responses that have become embedded in the DNA of oppressed peoples, why would I not have it somewhere in my DNA from Captain Sims and Antigua? Why would that be any different? Why'd I be any different? So in this, I find I have a choice. I can accept this rift and this effect and impact on me and the need for redemption, for restoration, for me. Or I can deny that. I'm a restorationist, right? I would love some restoration, but if King is right, and my identity and my personhood are derived from community, if I am in need of restoration, isn't the community in need of restoration too? In need of redemption, repair, recovery? So this begs the question, for those of us who get a little uncomfortable like I did when I first learned about the reparations movement. So that sounds kind of radical, kind of extreme. Couldn't we just tone it down a little bit? This begs the question, is America doing just fine? If America is broken, how can I not be? If America is in need of repair, how can I not be? Is Black America doing just fine? Are UUs doing just fine? Is Philadelphia doing just fine? Whatever your community is, that is a question I've been needing to ask. If the answer is no, then what does that mean? In wrestling through this, I've been watching basketball, as you guys know. It's college basketball season. I remember when I was a basketball player, if one of my teammates made a mistake, we would all have to get on the line and run back and forth. It's the worst thing. I got so upset because I didn't do anything wrong, and yet I was being punished for it. It was the worst. I was such an individual. I could not stand it. And even though coaches would tell me again and again, you win as a team, you lose as a team. I was like, that's ridiculous. But y'all, we win as a team and we lose as a team. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. That communalist message is one I'm not always comfortable with, even still to this day, because I grew up in the mainstream, white American, Eurocentric, Enlightenment era fueled, idealistic, individual society that I'm supposed to bootstrap my way to success and nothing and nobody can hold me down. But if we look around at this nation of innovators and creators, what Senator Booker continues to refer to as the greatest nation on earth, the fact that we've been unable to crack the veneer of racism that is embedded in every system in our society, government, economics, education, healthcare, entertainment, religion, everywhere, like a pandemic, that we cannot personal responsibility our way out of. We do our best wearing our masks, getting our vaccinations, and some of our neighbors might need 10,000 years. If we cannot personal responsibility our way out of a systemic problem, if we live in this system and we are infected by it, at least impacted by it, regardless of our intent, regardless of our yearnings, regardless of how many Jubilee trainings we've been to, regardless of how many Justice Council meetings we go to, are we doing just fine? Restoration, as the founders of this congregation considered it, involves recognizing the need for redemption, for recognizing our affectedness, sometimes our complicity in bad systems, in the unwholeness of community, and the need for love to be operating in order to become beloved community, to redeem a community, the need for love to do the restoring is important because I can't do it myself. I cannot redeem or restore the community, even if I am the leader, even if I'm the most knowledgeable. It's the community that has been wronged that does the healing of the rift. So here in America, me as a white person, a white male, able-bodied Christian person, I can't be the one to do the redeeming. It has to be the community that has been wronged. And here in America, that is our community of people of color, descendants of Africans enslaved in the United States. Only the wounded community can do the transformative healing work to bring the community back together, to do the transformative love. I wonder if that looks like the reparations work. We'll learn about reparations. We've been learning about reparations. We'll hear more after this service, that it's not just cash payments to assuage the guilt of a nation, although that might be a start. But the idea of reparations has taken on this form of a total restructuring of how we think about our society, how we think about our country, how we think about ourselves, to change all of the systems that I named, to solve a lot of society's problems. And I think it would. I think it's the antidote. And that's why I think it doesn't have a chance in hell of passing. We cannot even talk about race without it being labeled critical race theory. Anything that causes the slightest bit of discomfort, anything that challenges our notion of radical individualism, our belief that we are immune to the system that we grew up in, we're not ready for that. My community, where I'm from, and it's not just them. I sometimes feel that way too. When I read through the platform, I want to be on board. I've been to Jubilee training, and I find myself rationalizing away, trivializing details, denying whether or not that's accurate or needed. Parts of the platform say, that seems a little extreme. I'm not running for their mistakes. I didn't do anything wrong. But what is required of reparations, in my mind, what's required for this to work, is courage. The courage of people who look like me to give up comfort and security, potentially. Might give up me wanting to live in a certain part of town where I want to live, being able to travel where I want to travel, being able to think about the world the way I want to think about the world, being so sure that I know how it all works. I might have to give that up. In short, I might have to let love that leads towards the creation of beloved community get all up in my face and do some transformation. To the community where everyone is fully seen and recognized, that for so long I've thought the biggest roadblock is them. And they are part of the roadblock, them. But what if the other roadblock is me? If that's the case, I read the words of Howard Thurman, the admonition that each of us is individually responsible and autonomous for helping bring beloved community about, and it takes the whole system to make it so. So if I'm part of that system that is keeping beloved community from the agape from flowing freely, I can deny it and say, I'm not running for their mistakes, or I can accept it. And that takes a lot of courage and a lot of discomfort. And in that case, it takes a lot of restoration. I need a lot of repair. I need a lot of recovery. And I can't do it myself. I can't bootstrap my way into heaven, either on earth or in the life after. There can be no restoration without reparations to the community. There can be no beloved community without restoration. There can be no restoration without some kind of reparations. So friends, there cannot be a beloved community without reparations. That's a hard truth to wrestle with. This is a huge ask. It's not just up to us individuals here in this room and online, but it is up to us individuals here and online as part of this community to help bend the moral arc of justice. It requires courage, vulnerability. It requires me to admit when I mess up, when I make mistakes, when I'm complicit. It requires me to admit my unwholeness, my brokenness, my need for restoration. It requires courage to change and be changed. Courage to know that I can't do it myself. And it requires agape sacrifice of my individualism in service of community, communalism, and service of love with a capital L. Some days that feels easy. Some days that feels really hard. And the promise that I make to you is that you do not have to figure it out together, or you do not have to figure it out alone, You do not have to figure it out alone, and you do not have to figure it out today. Today might be the day to take the first tiny little move towards beloved community. In my line of work, we call it pointing our toes in the direction we want to go. You don't have to go all the way there. You don't even have to take a first step. Just point your toes in the right direction. Maybe that's what we can accomplish today. The move towards beloved community that requires love and justice and reconciliation, admitting when we are wrong, accepting when we are unwhole, because, as the Universalists proclaim, love with a capital L is at work. It is the love that transforms, the love of God, the love from the community, the love that is greater than I am. And that is an encouraging thought. So wherever you are on the journey towards beloved community, you are not alone. I hear you, I see you, I feel you. I'm personally invested. So for no other reason, I invite you to help me out. Because God knows I need it. And I can't do it myself.